Volodymyr Zelensky is back on tour. Get your tickets now. The Ukrainian president is traveling across Europe with his swag bag, ready to collect as much of your diminishing tax money as possible. This week, he was in England in his green military tracksuit to collect weapons from our bankster-selected World Economic Forum Prime Minister. Why is he always in his army gear? The front line is literally 2,000 miles away and he's been nowhere near it. Lines cut with credit cards are more appealing. British weapons are being handed over for the purpose of killing Russians. That'll end well. The Dutch are doing the same, not content with destroying their own farmers and sabotaging the food supply with net zero insanity. Now they're making themselves a target for reprisals from a nuclear powerhouse. Smart move, that. And that's the joke, is it is a smart move. If you're a psychopath, hell-bent on destroying your nation for your true masters. The cost of lockdown crisis has crippled Europe. The reckless printing of money has crippled Europe through inflation. The manufactured energy crisis has crippled Europe. Net zero policies are crippling Europe. The borders are wafer thin, with governments handing over billions to house, feed and supply mobile phones to men that entered illegally. A new report suggests 1 million migrants could enter the UK this year. 1 million. That kind of number changes communities and community cohesion completely. And if you throw in the sexualization and mental health war on kids, the breakdown of the traditional family unit, and the war on women via the alphabet mafia and their purple-haired allies, you have yourself a powder keg of chaos. If I wanted to break down a society and ultimately bring a nation to its knees so I could implement my new world order, I'd be doing all of the above. And then, with a nation begging for something to be done about it, I would usher in my order out of the chaos. But I call it something catchy like Build Back Better.
Well, yeah, that's a really interesting topic there, because I've just noticed yesterday a report from Associated Press saying that 50% of Americans didn't just not trust the media. They thought the mainstream media was deliberately misleading them to try and give them a formulation of reality that it wasn't true. So that's incredibly worrying if half the population thinks that, the mainstream media is deliberately being, misleading. So the way to tackle that, in my opinion, as a union rep and a union branch chairman, is to just make sure that journalistic integrity is, held in the number one priority, and that means holding authority to account, following the money. It also means journalists, not, to use a football terminology, they need to stop playing the man and play the ball instead, because a lot of journalists, they're tasked with targeting people who are coming up with conflicting narratives to the mainstream or the government narrative. So rather than attack the information that someone with alternative information is presenting, they attack the messenger rather than the information. And that, to me, is, low-level journalism, and it's, it doesn't really add to debate. It actually silences debate. So I think a key as well is just to have balanced debates. And for example, I do work for the Light newspaper, and they're sort of an independent newspaper that do allow for alternative messages to go out there. And I'm working on a story with a group called Informed Parents. And they've been around since the 1990s, raising awareness about vaccine harm. And so they got invited onto the BBC, and it was meant to be a balanced 50-50 debate. And her input was edited down to a minute, and it was about 9 minutes of pro-vax dialogue. Right. So it just really shows that there is an agenda there that's promoting big pharmaceutical companies, and this is emerging from the likes of the BBC. So, the top of these corporate mainstream media pyramids need to start looking at where their loyalties lie, and it should be with the readers and the listeners, not with your big corporations.
I have been in a place of certainty up until the last couple of months. And I haven't lost my optimism, but I've really come to the awareness through the production of Plandemic 3, The Great Awakening, that if the people don't step up, if the people don't let go of this addiction to being liked, which our technology has amplified that, right? There's no coincidence that all the buttons are about being liked, that, how many followers you have, how many likes your video got, that now determines your worth, your value. And so people don't want to do anything that jeopardizes their social currency. And so if we don't get past that, if we're not willing to stand out in the name of life itself, in the name of truth, then the next 5 years can get really ugly. It can get really ugly because these, if CBDCs come through and a lot of the things that are very detrimental to our liberties, then things can get very, very dark. And so the question is really for the people. Yeah. At what point are we going to step up and at the very least stop participating in the agenda, at the very least, and at the very most, say something about it, do something about it. And if we all do that, I don't mean all of us, because we'll never have all of us do it, but enough of us do it, then in the next 5 years, we are going to have a historic story of how America was almost overcome by a decades-old, if not 100-years-old agenda to kill it from the inside out, to bring it to its knees, because it's the firewall that protects all of the globalist agenda, that America was the one, because of its constitution, because of its unique experiment that it was the one to rise above, overcome this, and defeat it, and become a model for the rest of the nations to stand by. That's what we have potential to create together right now. And in many ways we are. You see the boycotting of a lot of these woke companies. You see a lot of companies that are bailing out on this ESG system, which is a whole environmental sustainability governance system that pretty much is a coercion to make major companies go woke. It threatens them that if they don't go woke and follow all the ideologies, that they will be severed from investment and their credit lines and all of that. And a lot of them are bailing out of that. So there's some great moves happening. And once people continue to do that, as ridiculous in so many ways as the Bud Light thing is, it's also a great model for us to recognize, to really recognize that major behemoth company is suffering right now because of one 1-minute commercial, and the people, that particular community that is, I heard someone say on the other day, this is a redneck beer, man. And it's like, okay, well, awesome, rednecks. You stepped up and you showed that when we vote with our currency, when we say no more, then a difference happens. And that sends out shockwaves to the other companies that have subscribed to these crazy new policies, which is a cultural revolution. It's no different than Mao's Cultural Revolution, really. And they wake up to realize that it's actually not good for business. When you look at the countries and what the farmers have done around the world that have pushed against these ESGs, it's like that's what all the people need to do everywhere. And then the whole thing gets shut down.
But brother, you have to understand, any poison that comes in the temple instantly creates antibodies. If you were to get bitten by a king cobra, you would take AntiVenom. Most people don't know how they create AntiVenom. What they do, they take the snake, they milk it, they get the venom, they then inject the venom into a horse or sheep. They can inject it in any animal because instantaneously that horse and sheep creates the antibodies. They then pull the blood out. The blood now has the antibodies. They spin it. That is the AntiVenom. The temple is no different, brother. And that's what they don't want you to know. And that's why they've done everything they can to keep this a secret. That's why they did all the hit pieces on me and Dr. Group when we went public with this, because they don't want you to know how simple it is to take care of your temple, brother.
Well, Project Veritas has remained the same. As you've seen, I discussed with your team earlier, we've done quite a few stories since February and March. This is a story that we put out most recently, which was exposing the gender clinics across the United States, mostly focused in New York and in Texas. And just recently, the Texas authorities, including Senator Cruz, Rep. Chip Roy from Texas, as well as the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, all issued letters to this gender clinic we exposed in Austin, demanding answers as to why 8-year-olds are being offered puberty blockers. The AG went as far as to announce an investigation into this Austin facility. Dell's Children's Medical Center is the name of it. And as a result of that, it appears that several doctors in that facility who were responsible for conducting these gender transitions on kids as young as 8, 9 years old already left the hospital. So it's interesting. I mean, the fact that the AG announced an investigation is a big deal, but the fact that within days the same facility went about I'm not entirely sure if they removed those doctors or if the doctors left voluntarily because of the pressure of an AG investigation. But either way, it appears to me that they're admitting some fault there, because if they had nothing to hide, why would there be doctors leaving this facility? So Project Veritas is making a very, very significant impact throughout the year coming from that Pfizer story you mentioned.
That's all for this week. Thank you for tuning in. Excess deaths and ill health continue to hit all-time highs. The BBC reports this week that record numbers of Britons are not working due to illness. What could be causing that, I wonder? Last week, the Daily Mirror went with the headline, Brits are dying in their tens of thousands, and we don't really have any idea why. You do have an idea why, you're just not permitted to say it. The article went on, tens of thousands more Brits died than usual from May to December 2022, raising serious questions as to why so many died. It does raise serious questions, but the issue with the bobblehead mouthpiece media is they refuse to ask them. There's an Overton window of debate and questioning that's allowed within these circles. These days, they will even allow you to suggest lockdowns have had an effect, but the real elephant in the living room is always off the table, and if anyone dares to bring it up, they'll be called an anti-vaxxer, as if that's an insult. Or in the case of Andrew Bridgen MP, they'll have their words twisted, get called an anti-Semite and removed from the Conservative Party. The term mainstream journalist is an oxymoron these days, because you can't be an actual journalist within those parameters. And that's why the ongoing Truth Be Told rallies in England and Scotland are so important. Those that have been harmed and or bereaved by the unmentionable elephant have been ignored by the medical and political establishment, but their experiences and messages are getting out there through the powerful speeches they're giving on the streets of London and Glasgow. The truth will out as long as we continue to speak up. And that truth is vital, not necessarily even for us, but for our kids, because this must never be allowed to happen again. Good night.